Alberta Primetime with Michael Higgins.
Welcome to Alberta Primetime. Ahead tonight, our politics panel on provincial government engagement in debate over bike lanes. But first, getting a read on business momentum.
What I was told over and over again is Albertans feel heard. Albertans feel like there is a place for them in Canada and that this government is listening to the desires of Alberta.
The federal energy minister reflecting on conversations during the Calgary Stampede. So, how do those impressions play with the results of an inaugural survey gauging the optimism of CEOs and entrepreneurs in our province? Let's find out from Mike Holden, Vice President of Policy, Chief Economist as well, with the Business Council of Alberta. Mr. Holden, good to see you, sir. Welcome back.
Thank you.
All right. It is the Business Council that's behind the survey we just mentioned. So what are CEOs saying about Alberta's economic outlook?
Well, they're quite optimistic, and so we asked in our survey about what their business expectations were for the economy, for their own business, their hiring and investment expectations over the next 12 months, and in all cases they were very optimistic. They're looking forward to growing, looking forward to adding more people, and think that better days are ahead.
We heard from the federal energy minister last night, and he described Stampede, in his words, as having a palpably different feeling. How does that track with the degree of business confidence you're seeing with these survey results?
I think they line up quite well, actually. I mean, what we're seeing from our businesses is that, in spite of the global turmoil that we're seeing, in spite of trade and tariff uncertainty, that the policy environment in Canada is improving. There are opportunities that are presenting themselves. And in spite of all of that chaos, the world is seeing Alberta as a good place in which to invest and seeing Canada as a place in which to invest. And so that combination of us having the goods and the things that the world needs on top of an improving policy environment, we're seeing similar levels of optimism to what the minister mentioned.
Maybe to dig a little deeper dive a little deeper into that degree of optimism, is this purely the impact of recent announcements around pipelines, data centers, et cetera?
Actually, it's actually better still, because we conducted this survey in late June before any of those announcements had even been made. So I think, if anything, those kinds of announcements and the positive messages that they send about the investment climate in Alberta and about the opportunities in the province would probably lead to even better results if we were to conduct the survey again today.
Okay, so what should Albertans expect then that optimism translates into? What comes with the degree of confidence in terms of numbers being reflected in the survey results?
Well, I think that what we can expect to see is, businesses are starting to take action. They're going to be investing more. They're going to be building new facilities, expanding existing ones, hiring people to do all of that work. And so, our hope and expectation is that we see even stronger economic growth in the coming years. Alberta is already expected to lead Canada in growth, and that could accelerate still even further. And that means more jobs, more opportunities for Albertans across the province.
As an economist, what does that potentially spell for the health of Alberta's economy?
Well, it's a positive result. It's unambiguously positive. I mean, I'd caution to put a specific number on what kind of an increase in GDP that would have. But as I said before, Alberta is already leading the country in growth, and this suggests that that's a strong expectation, and it could be even better than we currently expect.
Now, I need to ask, surprised by any of this, given the ongoing trade tensions with the Trump administration, not to mention the ebb and flow of global uncertainty surrounding the Iran war and the Strait of Hormuz?
A little surprised, maybe, that those weren't having as much of a negative effect as they might otherwise have. But at the same time, it also makes sense because we're seeing higher oil prices, which benefits a large chunk of the Alberta economy. It dramatically improves our fiscal situation. And trade uncertainty and tariff uncertainty, Alberta's been very lucky because most of the targeted tariffs against Canadian goods are in sectors that are in central Canada. So we're seeing weaker growth and expectations in Quebec and Ontario because of the auto sector, steel and aluminum. And those aren't major industries in Alberta. So the effective tariff that Alberta businesses are facing is quite negligible. So we've been fortunate in that regard. And so I I think that is also contributing to the optimism in the province, because we're not seeing that negative impact offset it.
Any flip side of the coin here for the CEOs, the entrepreneurs? Are there areas they're still hung up on, or maybe where they're still looking for changes?
Yeah, there are, and so one of the questions we asked in the survey is what businesses see as being the biggest barriers to future investment and growth, and it was very clear, and we've heard this before, not just in the survey, but from conversations with members that they're concerned about the regulatory environment still in Canada. We've got over 300,000 regulations that businesses face. The number of regulations has gone up by 37% over the last 15 years, and that's a barrier that they're concerned about. On the positive side, we are seeing positive language coming from the federal government, attempts to improve the process for major project approvals and permitting, and red tape review exercises federally. So we haven't yet seen results from those things, but those barriers that businesses have identified are barriers that the federal government is targeting and is taking action on.
All right, I have to ask, but what about the contentious issue of separation and the impending referendum? What did you glean from the survey in that regard? Does that play a role in the numbers?
Well, I mean, it's obviously the context in which the question was asked, and so I think that we didn't ask about separation specifically in the survey. Obviously, that's kind of in the back of everybody's mind when they're answering these questions. But I think that in spite of that uncertainty, in spite of not knowing what's going to happen in October, and as I said, the uncertainty that creates, we're still seeing optimism. We're seeing businesses wanting to invest, expand, add new people, and we're seeing investment announcements that help support that. So that I'm sure that the businesses were thinking about separation as they answered these questions, but in spite of the uncertainty that I know that they would feel, they're quite positive about what the future might hold.
Okay, so what do you feel different levels of government should maybe take away from the entirety of this survey?
Well, I think that in all cases there should be there's clearly an improved relationship between the federal government and the provincial government, and both are focused on attracting investment and getting pipelines built, attracting defense spending and other kinds of investment into the province. Focus on growth. The federal and provincial governments are both aligned in that area, and so I think on the federal side, it's about improving investment certainty, sending the message around the world that Canada is open for business, that we're working to improve the areas where we know we need to improve, like project reviews and permitting. And from the provincial standpoint, it's about making sure that we have an investment climate here that is inviting, that we welcome businesses here, and that Alberta continues to be a place where we can invest and grow and prosper.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Appreciate your time this evening, Mr. Holden. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Mike Holden, Vice President of Policy and Chief Economist with the Business Council of Alberta. From the Alberta government's bike lanes complaint line to impending student aid changes and what CEOs are saying about Alberta's economic outlook. Time now for tonight's politics panel, and joining us this evening, Laurie Williams, political scientist at Mount Royal University, and Ray Martin, former MLA and a former leader of the Alberta NDP. Good evening to you both. And let's begin with the provincial government setting up an online complaint portal for bike lanes. Transportation Minister Devin Dreeshen says he wants to hear about how bike lanes may be creating traffic congestion, hurting businesses, or affecting emergency response times. The minister has said new legislation is coming in the fall, though has not yet provided details of what that may include. Last year, Dreeshen joined Edmonton City Councillor Karen Principe to raise concerns about removing car lanes to add bike lanes. Laurie, the webpage for this portal is now live. I believe it went live on Wednesday. What's to be made of the motivation to launch it and even feed development of the yet-to-be-introduced provincial legislation?
Support for what they've already decided they want to do. There doesn't appear to be any provision to say what people like about bike lanes or some of the benefits that might be associated with them. And not only are they saying, what do you think? They're saying, are you noticing these specific problems? So parking issues, emergency vehicle access, traffic congestion, etc. And so it's it looks like what we call a push-pull, where you're actually describing certain things and pushing people toward a particular outcome. And of course, as we know, this falls within municipal areas of policy, and it's yet another interference by the provincial government into municipal affairs, where the local officials are much closer to what's going on within cities and able to hear from constituents there.
So, Ray, to what degree is this the place of the provincial government to weigh in on a municipal matter of this nature?
It's uncalled for, to put it bluntly. I mean, this is a civic responsibility. Let them do their job. Last thing we need is the provincial government interfering in what cities are doing, and the cities know more. The mayors and the council know more about what's going on in their particular domains in the city or in Calgary or the rural areas or whatever. Let them do their job. Let's not have the provincial government fooling around and coming in and not even knowing what's going on. So it's just unbelievable that the provincial government would think they have the right to even do this. This is a civic responsibility, pure and simple.
Could it not be construed, though, Ray, that this is the provincial government acting on, responding to very vocal pushback it's receiving to bike lanes and the impact they can have, be that on traffic flow? In Edmonton, hearing about street-side parking issues.
Yeah, well, I don't believe that's the case. I mean, some people are going to complain about everything. But do you think the provincial government would do a better job organizing within the city of Edmonton or the city of Calgary? No, they wouldn't. The reality is let the civic governments do their job. They're better at it. They know the places, unlike the provincial government, who doesn't know anything about what's going on. So no, tell the provincial government to keep their hands out of something that shouldn't be part of what they're doing. This is a civic responsibility, pure and simple.
Now, Laurie, with legislation anticipated, what do you see this setting up for in the relationship between the provincial government and Alberta's two big cities?
Right. Well, it looks like they are seeking evidence to support a policy against bike lanes to cut back on or restrict or even shut down bike lanes in some cases. And look, there's room for legitimate questions about this sort of thing. But I think it'd be better if they had an independent study, one that actually allowed for people to chime in on what they like as well as what they dislike, and to fine-tune the policy. And there's nothing wrong with getting more information on that, but it ought to be something that's done in collaboration or cooperation rather than in competition. This fairly continuous litany of policy attacks or interferences in municipal affairs, especially in Edmonton and Calgary, is, I think, a risky strategy to pursue. It does appeal to, I guess, the voters that they think they've got the best chance of winning over within these two municipalities. But it isn't good governance. It doesn't respect the diversity of opinion amongst voters, and it doesn't look like they're interested in evidence. They're interested in a policy that they have decided in advance is a direction they want to go.
All right, next up, pushback from post-secondary student associations over impending changes to accessing financial aid.
There are different circumstances for different students, whether that be financial barriers, relationships with their parents.
If you have wealthy parents who are not interested in helping you fund your education, you're at a loss. If you are, married and your spouse has a lot of debt, but they make high income, that's not really great either.
Changes in the upcoming school year will see the province doubling the minimum student contribution to $3,000, and loans will now be calculated calculated based on family income and family size. The Ministry for Advanced Education tells CTV News the aim of parental and spousal contributions is to provide students with aid who need it most. Ray, a logical evolution of the student aid system. What do you make of the changes being implemented here?
Well, I think Laurie would know more about this than I will, because she's right in the fellow things there. But I don't think that they should be. They're already paying enough. I think, from my perspective, as students, they are already. It's costly to go to university or NAID or SAIT or whatever. So I'm not that pleased with adding and saying, well, your dad or your mom make this sort of money, or your aunt or whoever else, therefore we don't we're going to just add more money to you to go to university, say, for example. I don't like this idea. That it should have nothing to do with the parents. It's a student that has to make that decision, so I would hope that they would back off that. But we'll have to see. Laurie, as I say, Laurie will have a better idea than I do, because she's working right there. You know, she'll know what's going on.
Laurie, you're on the front lines of post-secondary institution. Is this something students are talking about and prepared for? What's your read on the potential impact?
Look, students are struggling. Increasingly, each year, tuition goes up, supported student loans tends to go down. Now, to make access to these funds contingent on family income, when the family, whether it be a spouse or a parent, doesn't see the value in these sorts of things. I mean, let's say you've got a family that they're newcomers to Canada. They see that outlay of money up front, and they don't see the value in it. They'd rather, let's say, that their son or daughter make contributions to the family income. I've seen in high school, even, never mind post-secondary, students who cannot continue their education because families expect them to work outside of the home to contribute to family income. To put people in these kinds of situations where either the parent or the spouse doesn't value education, doesn't support what the student wants to do in the way of education, maybe doesn't endorse the area they want to work in. Let's say they want to work in medical physics, and the parent would rather that they worked as a doctor, because that's a field that they're more familiar with. So it's tough on students to make ends meet. And my biggest concern, and this has increased over decades, my biggest concern is the increase in tuition, the reduction in availability of financing means the students have to work more than one part-time job outside of school. That means less time to spend on their education, and it impoverishes their education. They don't have as much time to spend on school. They don't do as well in school. They don't learn as much. They can't apply what they're learning as effectively. And I just don't think that this is the best policy. It may well be that some students have wealthy parents and do get student loans, but in many cases, if the parents can afford student loans, I talk to students all the time. Well, no, I don't have student loans. My parents are able to support me. It's not the ones who can get parental support that are looking for student loans. It's the ones who can't. And so for the government to make it more difficult for those students, I think is going to be bad for educational outcomes all around.
All right, time for us to take a quick break, but when we come back, the impact of what business leaders are saying about Alberta's economic outlook. More from our politics panel in a moment. Welcome back. Alberta's economic outlook getting a boost from business leaders in the province. Results of a newly launched survey of CEOs show 65% expect Alberta's economy to improve over the next year. More than half plan to increase capital investment. 51% expect stronger revenue growth. 50% plan on increasing staffing. On the flip side of the coin, major barriers include regulations, taxes, input costs, and labor shortages. Laurie, we heard from Mike Holden off the top, chief economist for the Business Council of Alberta, the organization behind the survey. Coming off Stampede, how do you see these results reflecting ground level dynamics in the province?
I think it's a very interesting survey, and particularly that it was conducted before the stampede, before the Premier and Prime Minister announced that they had made progress on the pipeline MOU and other projects within the province. And so it makes me wonder, okay, well, what has led to greater optimism? This goes against some of the information we've been hearing from chambers of commerce and others, saying that they're hearing that people are more reluctant to invest in Alberta. So there are a couple of possibilities here. One is just that relationship having sort of already being seen as improving between Alberta and the rest of the country. And I think the other one might be that support for separatism. Right after the referendum question on separation was announced, or questions, I guess I should say, on separation were announced, we saw a dip in support for separatism. And so if people think, well, there's less support for separatism, maybe that gives them more confidence in investing into the future. But I'd certainly be interested in trying to get a sense of what exactly has led to what appears to be an increase in willingness to invest, an increase in optimism for the future. I'm also struck by the shortage of labor. This flies in the face of some of the immigration policies that the provincial government is considering. And so I think some nuance will be required there.
Yeah, and reflected in the upcoming referendum as well. So, Ray, to what degree do you see these results reflecting political dynamics, the efforts behind the provincial and federal governments to get together, make way for major projects that met with potential roadblocks in the past?
Yeah, well, I think I'm prepared to wait and see. I think there's some reason to be optimistic, but I think it's too early to tell at this particular time. You know, we know that the findings of their study is sort of interesting, that 65% of their CEOs expect the economy to improve. That's positive. And whenever people feel that way, then generally it happens. And more than half plan to increase capital investment. So it seems to be moving in a positive direction. I think it's still probably too early to tell what, in the long haul, what this means. But I think it's encouraging that there seems to be some positive vibes. It's good for business, but it's also very good for the average person if this is the case.
Laurie, last 30 seconds or so. One point we didn't get to with Mike Holden is that this is now a survey that will be conducted twice yearly by the Business Council. How do you see results from such driving change, even giving direction to Alberta's economy in the future?
Yeah, if we are able to see trends over time, increases that, and begin to try to get a sense of what is giving people more optimism, what's giving them greater cause for concern, if you can isolate and determine what some of those things are. Here we're seeing labor shortages as a concern, red tape as a concern. Those could certainly give direction to government. But I think I'd like to see a bit more nuanced or subtle exploration into some of the things that are generating more or less optimism amongst these folks. Certainly, Mike Holden mentioned that the Alberta economy is less vulnerable to what's going on in the United States than, let's say, in Quebec and Ontario, where the auto industry, steel and aluminum are being affected. But of course, things could shift in the United States and things could start to affect the Alberta economy more than they have up until this point. So it's tricky. It's tricky to know what the future is going to hold, including separation and what's happening in the United States. And although it's encouraging to see the optimism, there's also cause for concern.
All right. We'll have to leave it there. We're out of time. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Now, here are a few responses to a recent story posted by CTV News about the Wednesday afternoon snowbirds flyby over Edmonton, part of the final season of performances before the team goes on hiatus ahead of the arrival of a new fleet of aircraft. Alex writes, "I will miss these planes as I have seen them many times, but they are very old planes. I hope the snowbirds continue in their new planes as they are a great ambassador for Canada." Blue team, red team isn't happy, writing, "It's a total embarrassment embarrassment for Canada that we are replacing this aircraft with something significantly inferior. And Mark would like to say to all the crews, past and present, thanks for the memories. You always took my breath away. Have your say. Email us anytime at comments@albertaprimetime.com. Coming up tomorrow, with the doors now officially open to private sports betting companies in our province, we'll discuss iGaming market impact with an expert from the University of Lethbridge. That's on Friday. Until then, have a great evening, everyone, from all of us at Alberta Primetime. Thank you for watching, and join us again next time.